Hello, friends of Studio Brule. This is Steve Brule, and it is coffee time where we go over some of the interesting things in the news, in recent news. Today we're getting back to Janice Fiamengo with a special article about McGill University and a student who is suing the university for the incredible mistreatment that they put him through. And so, with no further ado, and a quick referral to my authorization as a VIP Club member of the Patriarchy to comment on all the evil comings and goings of the feminist empire that stretches its tentacles all the way around the world. And here we are with Janice Fiamengo. Hi, Janice.
Hey, hi, Steve. Let's see if we can do this. I have a feeling that maybe we're just not meant to ever discuss this article since we've just been having technical problems. Apologies to anybody who was waiting for this to start. Couldn't get the microphone to work.
Yeah, there's unfortunately a little buzz, a hum that some people might notice, but we tried to get rid of it, can't get rid of it right now. So, thanks again, Janice. I think we'll get through this one, and this is I think we need to spend the whole session on this because although it may not take us long, this issue is almost emblematic of the problems facing men today, all coming from these ideologically run feminist universities.
Yeah.
Let me pop the thing right up on the screen here right away, and should we go through the entire article paragraph by paragraph?
Let's go through it. It's short, and I think there's something to be said about pretty well everything.
Okay, so we'll start right from the beginning. This is McGill University student who sues the school, newspaper, associations, and accuser. According to the lawsuit, Declan McCool had to face a committee and defend himself against sexual assault allegations that were never explained to him. So far, we've seen this kind of thing many times before, right?
This is utterly standard. I think the only thing that's not standard is that this is actually being reported in a regular, mainstream newspaper. Most of these cases don't get reported except in small, specifically targeted media, such as something like Campus Reform. Most of the time it's just ignored. For anybody who doesn't know, McGill University is in Montreal in the province of Quebec in Canada. It's maybe certainly in the top tier of Canadian universities. I'd say it's that McGill and the University of Toronto and perhaps the University of British Columbia are considered the top three universities in Canada. Maybe McGill the very best.
Yeah, it's hard to say on ratings, and it probably depends department to department.
Yeah.
But yes, it's definitely the top tier school in Canada. And they're having the same issues that we've been talking about for, I've lost count of how many years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's read the next paragraph. A McGill University student has filed a $1.5 million lawsuit against the school, the McGill Daily Paper, two student associations, and a fellow student who was able to make anonymous allegations that he sexually assaulted her.
Yeah.
We might as well read the next paragraph
Yeah.
because this is standard fare so far. The lawsuit, filed at the Montreal courthouse this month, was by Declan McCool, a 24-year-old arts student, alleges the 11 parties named destructively impacted his life. McCool's allegations have not been proven in court, but the lawsuit chronicles a disturbing series of events in which he was accused by a person who remained anonymous to him while he was still expected to defend himself, even though he was not provided any details of what was alleged to have been done.
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, this is, we've seen this before, certainly. I've never seen it reported in this manner, actually quite sympathetically. The fact that this author of this article chose to use the word disturbing is interesting to me because it is disturbing, of course, but only men's rights advocates over the last few years and very unicorn-like a few journalists, mostly in the United States, have taken the time to report on what's happening to young men. But this idea that somebody should have to come forward and answer to allegations in which he doesn't know who has accused him and in which he doesn't even know the exact nature of the misconduct he's allegedly committed. It's crazy, but it's been going on at least ever since 2011 in the United States, and Canada pretty much follows the pattern that's set by the United States. So this is at least a decade old problem. It was probably going on even much earlier than that, but it was codified, of course, by the Dear Colleague letter that Obama and our good friend Joe Biden sent around to all colleges in the United States, warning them that on penalty of losing their funding, they would have to aggressively prosecute any claims of sexual misconduct. And they did indeed. And many, many hundreds, if not thousands, of male students have been disciplined, disgraced, had their reputations ruined, had their courses disrupted, or even been expelled from college as a result of these kinds of allegations and this kind of shoddy investigation.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. And yeah, you mentioned the Dear Colleague letter, which in fact solidified all this kind of thinking in our culture and accelerated it. This is probably the most extreme example seen in Canada so far, right? But we've seen pretty much all of this in a number of U.S. cases.
Yeah, well, I'm confident that this is going on in Canada as well. It's just that we don't hear about it. I've heard from individual Canadian university students about things like this happening to them. They just don't tend to get reported. I'm shocked that this reporter actually has decided to go ahead with this and say that even though the facts alleged in the lawsuit have not yet been proven, that this is a very disturbing series of events that's been chronicled. I'm surprised he went out on a limb to say it was disturbing. So yeah, I'm sure this is going on. We just don't hear about it very much. Certainly we had the case, that you and I reported on a couple of years ago now at the University of Ottawa, my own university, in which the entire hockey team was disgraced. The team was suspended for an entire year because of an allegation of sexual misconduct, which in the end was found not to have a basis. The two men who were charged with sexual assault and faced trial were ultimately acquitted. Yet there was never any admission on the part of the university that it had treated those men badly, that it had made a mistake. It had used those allegations as a platform for mass accusations against men on campus, for all sorts of hysterical claims about rape culture and misogyny and sexual harassment. And I mean, that became the occasion for a task force and a report that was written, tens of thousands of dollars spent, the demand that every single department across the entire university introduce some form of training or some form of teaching related to sexual assault. The entire university was gripped by a mania about rape culture, all based on a false accusation.
Well, and they're probably going off of the suggestion. I think it was Catherine McKinnon, the famous feminist, who said that I could have the name wrong, who said that men can learn from the experience of these false accusations. That's how much sympathy you can expect.
That's how much sympathy you can expect. That wasn't Catherine McKinnon at that point, although she might well have said something similar. I doubt Catherine McKinnon would have thought that any man could learn from anything. But that was a vice dean or an associate dean at a U.S. college, and I can't remember her name. It might have been Catherine Cummins or Cummins, something
that
like CU.
Right. That sounds
I
right.
can't. I don't know. I don't remember the exact details, but certainly yes. That was over. That was many years ago. That was over the Duke lacrosse scandal, which, if I'm remembering correctly, was in 2006, 2007. That was the case of a completely false allegation against members of the Duke lacrosse team, which was immediately believed, in which the men were immediately shamed, physically threatened, disciplined by their university. And ultimately, it was found that the woman who had accused them had entirely made up the allegation, and yet again, it was never withdrawn, and that was what prompted that particular feminist vice dean of student affairs or something to say, oh well, it's really good for men to be falsely accused. It's good for them. They should think about, maybe I didn't do it in this particular on this particular occasion, but I may have done it, or I'm capable of doing it.
Presumption of guilt. That's their modus operandi now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. There's this next little bit I'm going to read here is it raises all the red flags that we knew and recognized were coming when they first started all of this presumption of guilt crap, and they believe every accusation and then punish the man and worry about the truth later. Let's just have a read of this next paragraph that's quite short. I think you all see what I mean. According to the lawsuit, the allegation emerged this year after McCool was elected to be vice president internal of the Students' Society of McGill University, a position that comes with $35,000 salary. Now, you put a carrot out there. Here's somebody who may have enemies, or just a jilted lover, or somebody who wants that position and didn't get it him or herself, likely herself since it's a sexual assault and it's the women who get the sympathy for this. You got a carrot there of $35,000 a year. Maybe they want him pushed aside and another chance to get the job themselves. This is guaranteed to happen when you put this kind of policy or law in place.
Yeah. And it's not made clear, of course, in this article. We'll never know this woman's motives, but certainly competition is not beyond the realm of possibility. Simple revenge. How can we imagine that people aren't motivated by the desire to enact revenge? She saw that this man that she'd had some kind of sexual encounter with, had this position, and she knew that she could ruin him. She knew that she knew that there was a good possibility that simply by making an anonymous allegation, she could take that away from him. The temptation of that kind of power is pretty seductive.
And we're going to get a little bit of insight into this woman in this article, because there's a couple of quotes by her that are quite revealing, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's have a look at the next paragraph here. McCool ran his election campaign as a champion of the movement to address sexual violence. I know, it's so ironic, isn't it?
Wow.
It's so ironic. It's the whole group of people, they are all steeped in this same, every woman's accusation must be believed, and destroy the man, because if he isn't guilty of this one, he's guilty of another one in the past or one in the future.
Yeah. I mean, there it is. Like, if young men didn't need a clearer signal that you should don't touch this ideology. I mean, what's this guy doing running on a platform of addressing sexual violence?
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, go ahead.
Well, I guess he's probably, politically, it's the hottest topic, even though there's hardly any sexual violence on campus, as we know. This issue has been inflated to such a degree that it's just a giant Casper the Ghost out there with no substance.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it could have been a completely hypocritical or empty, rather, not hypocritical necessarily, but sort of empty, jumping on as you say, a hot bandwagon. I'm sure he was anti-racist as well, and would campaign that Black Lives Matter should have prominence at the University of McGill. I'm actually confused as to when this took place, because as far as I know, there's nothing going on the campus of McGill University, since September because of the coronavirus. So I don't, the article itself was published on November the 19th and talks about this year. So I don't know when it was exactly, but
I
anyway,
don't think they say it in the article, but the lawsuit is going on now.
now, so
But
maybe it happened last year.
could have happened a couple of years ago because these things can be awfully slow going through the system, you know.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, but the point is that this fellow is campaigning on the platform of needing to address sexual violence, as you've just said, basically a non-issue on university campuses. What possessed him? He knew it was a popular topic, I suppose. And like many men, I mean, not to assume that he's cynical about this, like many young men, I'm sure he was confident that he would never be accused because he was not interested in raping or assaulting or harassing a woman. And he never imagined that his good faith interactions with women could possibly result in an accusation. Because like so many men, he just thinks that these, he's been told that accusations are not made unless they're true. It's very difficult for women to come forward. Women won't speak about such a thing unless it's actually happened to them. That speaking about it is almost as traumatic as having experienced the thing in the first place. And therefore, we should believe women when they say that something terrible has happened to them. And so he believed that and thought, therefore, he was safe, and maybe even felt righteous indignation on behalf of women and against men, predatory men who would do terrible things. Be careful, men. Don't be sucked in by that false ideology.
For sure. I mean, he at 24 years old, though, he's pretty hard to give him the benefit of the doubt of being that naive, But he maybe thought that by running on that platform, he's waving a big flag out there. I'm one of the good guys, So don't attack me. It's kind of like putting black-owned business in downtown businesses to hopefully not have Black Lives Matter riot and loot and destroy your business.
Yeah.
I'm owned by a black person, therefore I'm one of the good guys. I'm waving my white flag out here. Don't destroy me, please.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, that could be. I'm one of the good guys. I'm one of the very few who really cares for women and treats them with respect. I really love women, and I'm lovable, therefore. I mean, you can't put it past the guy to have also thought that this is a very attractive position to take, and it may well make him even more popular or popular with the young women at his college. I remember when I gave one of my first talks at Queen's University, one of the ones that you recorded, and you'll remember all those guys during the Q&A period who stood up and said, did their obligatory confession of privilege, checking their privilege, as it was then called. I'm white, I'm male, I'm able-bodied, I'm heterosexual, I'm of an appropriate body size. One guy went through like an incredible list, and afterwards I was speaking to friends about it, and the woman's assessment was, these guys, they wanted to go home with somebody that night, and they figured this is one of the ways that you manage that.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of virtue signaling going on there for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, it didn't work for him. Shall we read on?
No, yeah, let's read on.
But it did get him the job, but then it didn't last very long.
Right.
Next, let's read on here. Philip Morales wrote in the lawsuit, okay, 1 week after he was elected, 1 week, the piranhas were just waiting there, right? If he wins, let's accuse him, so get him out of there. If he wins on this, we can just accuse him and he's done and we can get his job. 1 week after he was elected, McCool was advised by the Engineering Undergraduate Society that someone had anonymously made a complaint of sexual assault against him. Neither the accuser nor details of the accusation were provided. However, he was required to defend himself before a committee of 4 engineering students comprised to investigate the allegation. Engineering students. Yeah. I mean, students, one.
Yeah.
But they're students of engineering. and they're investigating a sexual assault accusation of which their accuser is not allowed to know anything about what he's. I mean, you can't. This should be a Shakespearean comedy, Janice. Don't you think?
I know.
It should be a Shakespearean comedy.
It's incredible. It's just incredible. I mean, I don't know why I was surprised to see he was being investigated by engineering students. I don't know why that was. I can only assume, we're never given the details of this, that somehow whatever happened, if anything happened at all, between this man and his accuser was connected to some kind of engineering function. Because as far as I could tell from the article, this McCool fellow is not himself even an engineering student.
Oh,
I think it said
general arts.
he was a general arts or an English student, I think it said. So I don't know why the engineering students are investigating him unless something happened at some in relation to some sort of engineering function. Anyway, but as you say, like what I don't know what to say about it. It's, my God, we've come to this. I mean, in the United States, it's bad enough in that the person who serves in the position of these, sexual assault tribunal adjudicating committees, the person who serves as the chair or the chief investigator of any allegation, at least has been hired into that position, although often from people, it's different at different schools, but often is hired from the university group of people. So it could be a women's studies prof who is now going to serve part-time in this position. It could even be, it says in the regulations of the DeVos reforms, it could even be a student, but at least it would be somebody who had some kind of training. I still think it's completely inadequate that you bring in some sort of feminist ideologue and give that person, I don't know how many hours of training, and suddenly they're equipped to gather evidence and investigate and conduct interviews and cross-examine witnesses and, come to a determination of guilt or innocence. I mean, it's just crazy. But in this case, it's even more ridiculous. 4 engineering students.
It defies all explanation. This is as kangaroo as it gets. It's so far out there that I mean, it wouldn't even be believable as a parody.
Yeah.
But no, here it is in real life.
It would seem overstated. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it gets worse.
Yeah.
Let's read the next couple of lines here because this is kind of interesting. Let me just get to switch this out. McCool appeared before the committee, which did not inquire or address any specifics of the allegation. Now read the next paragraph. McCool was, quote, convicted by the committee, which imposed a restriction from participating in McGill events involving students and alcohol. So here it is. It's a kangaroo court of some drunken engineers who hear a hearsay of an anonymous person about some other guy they never met, and they didn't inquire, they didn't question him on it. They had him stand before him simply, it appears, come before us and stand before us so we can convict you in face to face. No inquiries required, no evidence, nothing required. We just want you to stand there and we're going to look at you and say, you're guilty.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like, it's like some straight out of, Mao's Cultural Revolution, I think, where he was simply, the whole point of it seems, was to shame him.
Yeah. And in fact, this would be an over the top for Mao, probably.
Well, I don't know about that.
Maybe not,
it's pretty. It's stunning. It is stunning. And now I know that defenders or at least skeptics who think we're getting too excited about this are going to say, okay, yeah, but look at what the punishment consisted of. All it was that he was barred from attending any engineering society events. So this is what makes me think it had to have been, he had to have been at something with his accuser that was an engineering society event. So now they've decided he can't attend any more of these. Well, you could say, okay, well, big deal. The process was unfair, but the punishment is not It's not particularly harsh. He's not being suspended for 6 months. He's not being prohibited from completing his degree or whatever. But still, I don't care. It's still an obvious disgrace. And even though initially he was told that the process was supposed to be anonymous, he's still going to be. It's going to be known.
You know how these things work.
Of course.
We're going to see how bad it gets shortly.
Yeah.
We're going to see how bad it gets, because it doesn't stop there.
It doesn't stop there.
But the main point is, why a punishment at all for something he didn't do, or not even have evidence to do, and he's not even allowed to know what it is.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, as a parent, you call your kid in here and you say, you know something, I'm going to punish you. I'm not going to tell you why, but you're punished for the next 6 months. You can't go out and do anything.
Yeah.
Your kid's going to look back at you and say, well, I may be only 6 years old, but you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah. The parent, is, you've done something very wrong, and it had to do with your room. It had to do with how you failed to clean your room, but I'm not going to go into any details, and I'm not going to actually investigate whether it's true or not. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's remarkable.
A 6-year-old can see the injustice in this.
Yeah. And yet
maybe a 3-year-old.
Let's repeat it, though. This is not that unusual. It is not. This has been going on. We know it because there have been hundreds of successful lawsuits in the United States about very similar kinds of issues. We've learned that young men went before individuals. They went before committees. They didn't have any statement of what it was alleged they had done. They didn't know who had accused them. They were asked very general questions. They didn't know how to defend themselves. It was just horrible. And they had harsh punishments. Men were denied the degrees they'd been working on. They were suspended from school. Their entire reputations were ruined in an allegedly formal process of investigation that was utterly farcical. So this isn't that far off. This is the first lawsuit that I know of in a Canadian context, but I'm sure there have been others.
Yeah, I think the first one on specifically a sexual assault case that we heard about. We've seen other kinds of abuses of administrative power.
Oh, for sure.
Like that one in Windsor with that woman, I forget her name now, Lindsay.
Oh yes, Lindsay Shepherd. Sure, that was
different issues. Different issues.
Yeah, that was at Wilfrid Laurier. Oh yeah, that kind of thing. Students getting in trouble for having the wrong opinions. A student getting in trouble, as in the case of Lindsay Shepherd, because she played a clip from Ontario TV with Jordan Peterson. I mean, there's all universities have gone crazy. In Canada in particular, with political correctness. You just did the case last week of that poor young fellow, the medical student at the University of Manitoba, who was actually kicked out of school because he had made some Facebook posts.
That was by Barbara Kay, that article.
An excellent article.
Excellent article. And that was the first case where that Barbara Kay was aware of that we're talking about, because he had unauthorized beliefs. He did not make a claim that he changed his beliefs. Therefore, he had to be punished for his beliefs.
He wrote something like 14 letters of apology because his Facebook posts had supposedly made his colleagues feel unsafe. They were pro-life and pro-gun Facebook posts. He apologized for them, but because he did not confess to having a complete revolution in his beliefs, that it was considered insufficient. I mean, it's just, we've gone completely around the bend.
And we've been warned about these kinds of regimes in all kinds of dystopian novels or dystopian future prediction novels. But here it is, coming right in front of our eyes. Happening right in front of our eyes. Let's read the next two paragraphs because they are also quite revealing. The process was supposed to be confidential, but 8 hours after McCool was informed, he was called before the committee to be ridiculed and told he's guilty of something he doesn't know of. The McGill Daily, that's I guess their university paper, published an online article naming him and characterized McCool as a sexual predator. Imagine that, his face and name in the paper. I don't know if his face was there, but everybody will know.
Yeah.
According to the lawsuit, the McGill Daily did not contact McCool for comment. Incredible. This is Salem witch trials all over again.
Yeah.
Let's read the next paragraph. This began a series of events whereby the Student Society, the complainant, students, and others engaged in a deliberate pattern of persecution that ruined McCool's reputation and standing in the community. Well.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
There it is. This is Mao's Cultural Revolution stuff right there in front of our eyes, eh?
Yeah, yeah,
Utterly
and
destroying
these are students, gripped by this mania to persecute, and this utter self-righteous conviction that as soon as somebody has been identified as a sexual predator, there's nothing that could be done to him that's beyond the pale. And the idea that the courts have failed women, and all the processes, even the university processes, have allegedly failed women because they don't simply take the woman's word. Any process that does not simply act to destroy the man on the woman's word is alleged to be unfair to victims and to re-traumatize victims. So we've heard that so often, consistently, from the very highest levels, from the President of the United States. I'm talking about Barack Obama, of course. He made these kinds of allegations all the time. And and right through every major institution in North American culture, it's been touted. And so, now this is what university students feel that they have every right to do to one of their fellow students as soon as an allegation is made.
And you know something, Janice, what's going on here is destroying the most important legal protections that have ever been invented for humanity. Mm-hmm. The presumption of innocence, the right to face your accuser, the right to due process. These are the things, these are the legal tools that have protected the innocent, that the only legal tools that we have that protect the innocent from wild accusations from people with ulterior motives.
Yeah.
And Biden, who in all likelihood will be running the U.S. next.
Yeah.
With a bit of a noise there. He is going to push it even further. He's going to backtrack Betsy DeVos's really rather minor improvement in the Title IX situation. And I think he's going to push the VAWA thing further. This is a disaster just waiting to happen.
Yeah, well, he's come forward to say, he's said on numerous occasions, on the occasion of the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, he made the comment that women should always be believed. And then further on, he said that also around the same time that the justice system that we have is the white man's system and needs to be radically reformed from the bottom up. I don't think he himself, has the intellectual ability to actually even understand what he means by that and what that reform would look like. But you can bet there are many, many people surrounding him who will have very specific ideas. And we need only look at feminist legal theory, critical race legal theory, to see what that looks like. And it means different standards for different people depending on your identity group. It's pretty scary stuff. It's the allegation that the due process that is in place now as part of American law is actually slanted in favor of white men, and then it has to be completely remade in order to build in systems that will disadvantage white men in order to allegedly make the whole system more fair. It's a terrifying thing.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been preaching that men should abandon the West for a while now, and every time I hear more of these cases, it just reinforces my belief in encouraging men to do just that, even stronger.
Yeah.
Shall we read on?
Yeah. Let's keep going.
I'm going to skip the one paragraph because all it says is that the McGill, the student newspaper, printed anonymously comments from the accuser. They didn't allow the guy to comment in the paper, but they then subsequently let his accuser not only comment, but comment anonymously. And let's read what she said here in the paper. This is quite revealing. This is the woman's word, and they're calling her Sam, and it's a pseudonym. I reported the incident anonymously because the person I was reporting had recently become a very powerful and visible person on campus, and I felt it was safer for me to do it this way. Don't believe me? That is really too bad. Wow. The student, identified only as Sam, wrote while adding later she was seeking to have McCool removed from the SSMU Human Resources, which, according to her statement, can be done through an anonymous reporting process. That has all written all over it, some kind of personal vengeance vendetta, this kind of wording.
Yeah.
It's not about her having been wronged or seeking justice for a crime. It's about attacking him. Let's read the next paragraph again, which is more of the same.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I chose this route because reporting through the police or McGill would have been a long and arduous process that I did not have the time, resources, or energy for. Some sexual assault, It's just not so important that she really needs to report it to the police, or she doesn't have the time to deal with it. So let's just destroy this guy's life in one swell soup and get on with things, right?
That's it.
I would have also had to sacrifice my anonymity if I went through the police. I would have had to face institutions that have long histories of mistreating cases like mine with processes that are nowhere near trauma-informed, feminist lingo, or survivor-centric. We know we're dealing with a radical feminist right here. And she...
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
well, that's not it for the article, but that's it for this bit.
Well, what you're saying is exactly right, and it's just astounding, isn't it, to see the language there? It's like these prefabricated phrases, not survivor-centered, not trauma-informed. Everything she says about the legal process, how it has a long history of failing survivors, and all of that. This is somebody who has been indoctrinated, as so many other students have. She's been weaponized to believe that she hasn't even tried to report this alleged assault. Who knows whether she even thinks that it's real enough to report, but she already feels that she's been wronged by the system and that this is her only resort. And where has she got that from all of these struggle sessions in feminist courses? And well, you don't even have to go to university to be full of rage and misinformed about the position of women in North American society. And so she feels that it is perfectly within her rights to make an anonymous allegation about a man, to tell all her friends, and to organize a group of supporters to destroy him. And she still feels like she's the victim. She's the righteous one.
Well, there's such a simple solution to this, If it's a crime, it's deal it with the police. It's just so frickin' simple. But what we have, this feminist control of our entire culture that gives them the power to start having these extrajudicial bodies that can actually destroy people's lives on nothing.
Yeah, they don't care. They don't care. I mean, that's, of course, one of the things that feminist ideology does, is it completely leeches away any sympathy from the target of one's anger. And, this is a privileged white boy. He doesn't deserve any empathy. He doesn't deserve due process. And, and it's what's so ironic about all her claims about how, I didn't want to go to the police because it's a very long, arduous process, and it's not survivor-centered, and it has no trauma-informed theory. All of the trauma-informed theory, is probably everybody knows, is basically a feminist theory that is infecting the legal system very very, very radically, that says that no matter how many holes there are in the woman's testimony, no matter how many times she contradicts herself or can't remember, or is completely blank about certain parts of the incident that she's describing, whatever it is, even if she's discovered to have lied about certain things, that doesn't mean that what she's alleging didn't really happen. Because according to trauma theory, she's so deeply traumatized by what has happened to her that she may never be able to remember it properly. And all of these contradictions and, blank spots, etc., simply confirm the fact of the trauma rather than throw doubt on her veracity. And that was the theory that was used in the Harvey Weinstein trial by an expert forensic psychiatrist. I think her name was Barbara Ziv. She testified at length that the behavior of Harvey Weinstein's accusers, which on the face looked kind of suspicious. These are women who, wrote emails to Harvey after their alleged sexual assaults, saying how much they enjoyed the evening with him, and wrote him weeks later saying they couldn't wait to see him again. Love you, big guy, and all these kinds of very affectionate greetings and expressions of affection and so on. And Barbara Ziv testified that that's how victims behave, that they often go back to their rapists. They try to normalize things with their rapists. Now, so all of this, this has nothing to do with this particular case, but that's what trauma-informed theory is. It's a way of making it impossible for any man to defend himself. And it's working its way into Canadian law. So she's actually not even correct about the fact that Canadian law somehow fails survivors. Feminists have been working away at Canadian law for years and years, for decades, and it is changing. In fact, it changed just a few years ago after the Jian Ghomeshi trial. You remember that a bill was introduced to make it more difficult for men to use emails and text messages to defend themselves against sexual assault. It looked like that was a slam dunk if people remember that case. Jian Ghomeshi, of course, was a much loved CBC television personality. And he was, all of a sudden, all these accusations and rumors started to circulate about him. Many women came forward and accused him. Only 3 actually ended up going to criminal trial. And the only way that, he would have been convicted for sure, except he had emails showing ongoing sexual and affectionate relationships with all 3 women long after they had alleged he had sexually assaulted them. And but it wasn't even so much that he had those emails showing that they had continued to pursue him after the incidents where he allegedly raped them, but that they were caught out in lies, because they were asked by his defense team, did you continue to remain friendly with this man? Oh no, I couldn't see him anymore. I couldn't bear, did you continue to send emails to him setting up dates? And they said, oh no. They didn't realize he had all this evidence. And then they were able to, the defense team was able to show that all these women had lied about the incidents that they alleged had happened. And so feminists hated that. And they then lobbied the then Minister of Justice, what was her name? Wilson Raybould, Jody Wilson Raybould. And they brought in a change to the Canadian law regarding sexual assault, that any emails have to be revealed at the beginning of trial to the judge and to the prosecutor. So that means the prosecutor will know what evidence the defense counsel has, and no woman making an accusation will ever be caught out in a lie now, because they'll be able to construct their story knowing what emails the man has in his possession. That is an incredible blow to men's right to defend themselves. That cannot, the severity of that, the significance of that absolutely can't be exaggerated, in my opinion. I mean, I think men should be marching in the street about that instead of running on a platform of how we need to, deal with sexual assault on campuses. But somehow men are quite willing to watch other men, or I don't know what, there certainly isn't the anger about it that there should be. It's incredible. So, but she's learned what she's supposed to say as an innocent victim. She's supposed to say that the reason she didn't go to the police, or the reason she didn't even go through a formal process at her university, was because it would be too traumatizing. And because, as a survivor, she couldn't bear any more of that.
Yeah, and I think the John Gomeshi trial, the one of the things is you can't bring social media social media into the trial at all. It's disqualified as evidence. Was that not right?
I don't know. I didn't hear about that. I heard mainly that it all has to be disclosed at the beginning.
And also, weren't those women found to be discussing and strategizing on their story while the trial was going on, and what they would reveal and not reveal?
Yeah, they claimed they had no communication with one another. It turned out they'd been communicating before the trial and throughout the trial, so that they could get him. What
these kinds of trials are revealing is that it's not that it's unusual for women to lie and conspire, is that it is extremely common. In fact, it's happened in almost every case we know about. There's deceitfulness, there's lies, there's conspiring with one another. So, I mean, and you should expect that. They're human beings. Human beings are going to game every system they're involved in. There are very, very few human beings out there who would reveal anything that would put themselves in a worse light than they want to be in. But maybe we should read the next paragraph
let's finish
here.
It up. Yeah.
This is also quite revealing on another angle. I'll just read the first sentence in it because that itself is revealing. The Montreal Gazette has decided to not publish the student's name for the time being.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone. This is a sympathetic article to the victim, a guy who they are identifying, and they're talking about everything surrounding the case, but they won't publish the name of the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Protecting the woman. Now, I can guarantee you that they would publish the name if it was a man.
Yes, of course they would. Yeah.
Let's read on then.
Yeah, I know. I mean, she continues to be treated as the victim, even when there's absolutely no evidence that she is, and there's lots of evidence that what she has done has been an aggressive attack on an innocent man.
Yeah, definitely. The lawsuit describes how the decision made by the Engineering Undergraduate Society was appealed, and the allegations were then investigated by a lawyer. McCool, quote, was provided with details of the allegations, including the complainant's identity, and he was finally afforded an opportunity to answer allegations. The independent investigator, after hearing from numerous witnesses, almost entirely produced by the complainant, dismissed the complaint and set aside the restrictions, Morales wrote. The lawyer who investigated the allegations determined, quote, both parties had the capacity required to consent to sexual activities on the night of February 25th and the morning of February 26th, and that both parties gave continuous and affirmative consent to the activities through their actions. That is about as clear a vindication of innocence, a vindication of the accused, as ever could be written. And what pisses me off here is, in spite of having that information and publishing that information, the Montreal Gazette, who is as sympathetic as any periodical can be, still refuses to name the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Because it's a woman.
Yeah.
It's completely unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, that happened in the case of the U of Ottawa hockey team as well. Even after the judgment had been delivered, after years of their shame and agony, even after the two men then finally went through the trial and were found not guilty, the reports of the trial still would not name the accuser. That's
It's
yeah,
it's completely unacceptable.
yeah, I mean, it's really amazing. And I mean, in the case of the Jian Ghomeshi trial, which is the most famous, had been proved that those women committed perjury. I mean, there's all sorts of different categories of wrongdoing. I think there's mischief, there's obstruction of justice. I don't know all the different categories. Of course, I'm not a lawyer, but even like I think they were found to have fabricated evidence. I don't know what the communicating, whether that would be conspiring to pervert the course of justice. I mean, there's all these different categories. Like you would have thought that that would be pursued. And yet there is absolutely no appetite in our culture, it seems, for women who make false allegations to be punished for them. There are a few cases, of course, but in that case, it was so clear that they had lied.
Yeah.
And
They lied and conspired. I mean, it's as bad as it gets in terms of obstruction of justice.
Yeah, they tried to have a man put in prison maybe for the rest of his life.
To use the justice system to commit a crime against a man, and the justice system itself did not respond.
Yeah, and in fact, feminists made changes to the law that would mean that in future, a Jian Ghomeshi in exactly the same circumstance might well be convicted because they'll know that he has those emails.
Yeah.
And so they won't be caught lying on the witness stand or lying to police, as was the case with Ghomeshi's accusers.
No, I mean the thing is for young men. If any young men listening to this, look at men, get out, have your family. Look at my video, Husband 2.0, how alternatives to be an indentured servant, because you are at huge risk in Canada and any of these jurisdictions that are doing these things. Have your family and your sex life in a different country. It's not worth the risk. Let's finish this. There's, I think, only just a couple more paragraphs left, and there's some more.
I wanted to say too, just before we finish it, I wanted to say that I was surprised that that lawyer. I mean, even that it's a weird process, bringing in a lawyer to sort of interview people and come to a determination. But I was surprised that the lawyer came to such a definitive and exonerating conclusion. Like the evidence must have been overwhelming, because I mean, he claimed that there was he claimed that there was evidence of continuous affirmative consent. How can anybody know that? I mean, we've created now a law. We've got a law about sexual assault that it is absolutely impossible to prove.
Yeah.
I don't see how the lawyer could even say that, because he wasn't there and was short of being there. How could you know that there was continuous affirmative consent unless the girl herself said there was, which presumably she wouldn't say. There must have been emails and texts from the girl to the fellows afterwards saying, that was really fun. And, I hope we'll do it again. Or, that was a wonderful experience. Thank you so much. Or whatever, there must have been some pretty powerful evidence, because otherwise I would think that, like in so many of these cases, all a lawyer could really say was that we have two different stories about what took place, and it's impossible to determine, because that's the reality of most sexual encounters.
Maybe the guy was smart enough to videotape the entire encounter.
Well, that's it. I mean,
That's the only. But even that, they'll throw that out. They'll
Well,
find a way
that
around that. They'll find a
I-
way around it.
yeah, I mean, I think that's illegal, isn't it? To videotape without the other person's permission. That would be seen as itself a kind of sexual abuse. That would be seen as the making of revenge porn or something like that. So I don't, I don't think even that is a way of, you'd have to tell
Maybe
your
audio
partner.
recorded it.
Yeah, you'd have to tell your partner, I'm going to audio record this just in case. Well, that's a great way to ruin a mood.
Tell her you're videotaping her.
Yeah, I
And
don't.
do a little wink off camera. I'm videotaping you. You got to be tricky.
Honestly,
I mean,
it's-
the cards are so stacked against you.
Well-
You gotta do something to defend yourself.
yeah, I mean, it's like we have created a situation where it is literally impossible in most cases for a man to defend himself. And since we no longer believe in presumption of innocence, and we're making it harder and harder in courts of law for men to pursue avenues of defense. It's amazing to me what's happening.
Yeah. All I can say, guys, get out, have your sex life somewhere else in a different jurisdiction. Okay, so next paragraph. According to the lawsuit, while the appeal process was underway, SSMU suspended McCool, and 3 of its executives published a statement condemning him, including false and defamatory statements against McCool portraying him as a sexual predator. In an email exchange, Cynthia Lee, a spokesperson for McGill University, wrote, "We have been made aware of the lawsuit because it is before the courts. We cannot comment at this time."
Yeah, of course.
No
That's
one from
it.
McGill or Daily Mail replied to request for comments.
Now, of course, that if this was a female student bringing a lawsuit against McGill because claimed it to, support her in some manner after she was sexually assaulted or harassed, that there would be some kind of comment, a statement that, McGill strongly believes in the right of survivors to be heard and to be supported, or McGill is committed to creating an environment in which women can work at their studies free of the fear of sexual harassment. There'd be something, but because it's a man suing them for the atrocious way that his reputation was smeared, they're not going to say anything at all. They're just going to hope that the lawsuit won't be successful. And I don't know whether it will be. Really, I hope it is. It certainly seems that the way he was treated was atrocious, but I don't know whether there's much precedent in the Canadian legal system for these kinds of lawsuits. And of course, very few students have the financial wherewithal to be able to pursue a lawsuit. I don't know how much this is going to cost him, but I don't know, like it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's well beyond the means of the vast majority. Well, the vast majority of students and even the vast majority of ordinary people.
Yeah, certainly a weakness in our culture,
Yeah.
in our legal system. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't have any way to keep the legal system accountable. I mean, they distort the legal system by picking and choosing who they're going to prosecute, right off the bat.
Yeah.
This woman won't be prosecuted. Jan Mages,
No.
Jan Gomeshi's
False
perpetrators,
accusers.
false
Yeah.
accusers were not pursued for nothing, no punishment. And this guy, you can bet that 90+% of the student body will know of his being accused and convicted by that kangaroo court, and will never hear about his exoneration or his lawsuit.
Right. That's it.
So
That's how these
his
things work.
reputation on campus is destroyed regardless of how this works out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an employer in the future who Googles his name, all this stuff will come up. Even if in the end it is found that I really wonder how he can be successful with his lawsuit, but I hope he can. But even if it is found that his lawsuit is pursued, many people will assume that he must have done something wrong. And yeah, it's for many men, the process of the humiliation, the hatred that comes their way, it's so dispiriting. They fall into depression. That's the case of the fellow at UBC. I'm blanking on his name right now. He was the head of the creative writing department.
Yeah, I remember the
Stephen
case.
Galloway. Stephen
Right.
Galloway. How could I forget his name? I've thought about him so often. I mean, in his case, he was accused, and he was exonerated by a lawyer. She was a former BC Superior Court justice, I think, retired, and she was brought in to investigate the case. He had horrible accusations made against him, in one particular case of repeated rape in his office. He was exonerated from that. It turned out, I mean, the rape allegations were farcical on their face. I think, she claimed that he had raped her in his office, and it turned out it was on a day that students were coming in and out of the office constantly to pick up their final papers. He couldn't have done what she claimed. It turned out that he'd had a years-long affair with this woman, and this was some kind of and that seems to be the case in the case of this McGill student too. It seems like he had a consensual relationship with this girl, and then for whatever reason she accused him afterwards. In the case
Hell
of
hath no fury,
Yeah.
like a woman scorned.
That's
He
often what
probably
it-
said, this is a one-off for me. See you later, and she got pissed
Yeah.
off at that.
And
That's
and
likely.
I think that's it. And in the case of Galloway, he'd had a years-long relationship, obviously totally consensual, with this woman, but then they broke it off. They were both married at the time, and he ended up breaking up with his wife, and he married somebody else. And so it seems as if the fact that he was willing to marry somebody else triggered in this woman an intense rage. And she went after him with these allegations. And anyway, he was dismissed from his position. He was shamed. All of his colleagues shunned him, even though he was exonerated. Didn't help him. He got a tiny financial settlement from the university, but nothing that would make up for the years and years he would have had of a very high salary as a professor in the creative writing department. And his life was just destroyed. He was a novelist. He's never written again. And the woman who accused him is still anonymous. She's still not identified whenever there are accounts of the case, even though there's no way that what she claimed happened could possibly have happened.
Well, I don't know, Janice. It doesn't look good for men. It doesn't look good for women. I mean, men have they owe it to themselves to be very, very suspicious and cautious of any woman they interact with in the West. You owe it to yourself. And so and I have to say too, maybe this stuff is being pushed by feminists, but no women's groups are opposing it. There are a few individual women like yourself who are part of the MRA universe who are opposing this stuff, but there are no women's groups that I know of that are opposing any same manner any feminist initiative.
No, I mean, except for, Women Against Feminism and yeah, so the very small
tiny
fringe groups like that. And there are some individual journalists, and I'm not going to think of all the names right now, but certainly Kathy Young. There's another prominent American journalist who's written extensively about false allegations and the campus kangaroo court system. I'm just blanking on her name right now. So there are some very good journalists, some of them female, who've certainly, Christina Hoff Sommers and people like that have written very, very effectively about these issues. But yeah, I mean, it's astounding to me. It really is the lack of interest.
There's that one woman, Wendy McElroy. That's what's the one that came down to you're talking
excellent.
about. She's very good, yeah.
She's excellent.
But they're all individuals. That there's no concerted effort in our culture, and the MRA movement, even a woman in the MRA movement, is ridiculed for coming out against or talking or arguing against feminist initiatives.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't. Yeah, it's amazing to me. And Well, like as I say, I mean, we should be marching in the streets just on this one issue. Let alone all the dozens and dozens of other issues that occupy and enrage men's issues advocates. But this one is incredible, and yet somehow we just keep on going. And as you said, Biden got elected. If he really got elected, or he ran on a campaign of immediately writing an executive order to undo the reforms made under the Trump administration. Yeah, Betsy DeVos's reforms, which were, as you say, very minor. Didn't even, I mean, the whole thing should be scrapped. Universities have no business adjudicating these claims. They're not trained to do so. It's ridiculous. And but yet he was able to garner some support for completely making it worse. He even said that he had ideas to make it better, to make it more survivor centered. So it's really disturbing.
Well, having said that, Janice, that's probably a good time to wrap it up. We've been a little over an hour here.
I know you've got things to do, so good to speak to you. Thanks for having me on to talk about this. One can only shake one's head.
No, it's terrible for this fellow. I mean, we kind of we're not laughing at the fellow.
No,
we're laughing
I'm sorry
at
I laughed.
No.
Ridiculous.
I'm pointing out the obvious here. We're never laughing at the man. His situation is tragic and terrible. He's a victim of not just this woman, but of an entire culture, an institution of McGill at the university systems, and an entire broader culture that victimizes men just because they can for ulterior motives. So, So when will we have you back on next, Janice?
Ooh, let's do it again in a couple weeks.
Okay, 2 weeks. Let's get back to our Friday schedule.
Yeah.
So let's say 2 weeks from last Friday.
Okay.
All right. And
All right.
The last time it was 3 p.m. my time and 11 a.m. your time. That's still good for you?
That's good.
Once again, folks, thanks for joining us here at Studio Burley for Coffee with Steve and the wonderful, always insightful Janice Fiamengo. Look for us again in be about a week and 4 days now. And we'll get a topic together. There's no shortage of topics out there.
That's for sure. All right.
So don't forget to do something you love every day. If you don't have something you love, find something you love and